Hi, everyone. My name is Akos. I'm the CEO of Airtime, and Airtime is a user engagement platform empowering product teams to validate user needs within days. And today I'll be talking to Maria about mixed methods research. We're going to be talking about what it means, how to get started with it, or pitfalls to avoid. And at the end of the discussion, we're going to have 15 minutes Q&A. Okay, so this is important. This is a time when you can pick Maria's mind. She has a lot of hands-on experience on the topic, so use your chance to do so. And throughout the session, if you have any questions for Maria, what she said something and you want to have a follow-up, post it in the chat. I will pick it up and pass it on to Maria in the Q&A session or section. All right. So that was the technical part. One more fun fact for today. I looked at the history of mixed methods research, and apparently already in the 1850s, there was a study using mixed method research. And I'm saying this because I've only seen a resurgence of the method in the last few years. This is the reason, Maria, you're here today. So let me also stop talking and hand over the mic to you. It's a pleasure to have you here, Maria. Could you say a few words about yourself for the audience?
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Akos, and thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it. Really excited to share my experience with mixed method research. And thanks for sharing this fact. I did not know that. My experience with research and like with many people in the field actually was a winding path. So I've started in business analytics, working in consulting, and then switched to more analyzing people in marketing analytics at Zalando. For people in Europe, you probably heard of it. For people in the US, it's like a fashion e-commerce company. It took me about 2 years until I eventually crossed path with an internal innovation lab at Zalando and got to know about design and user experience and human-centered design. And I completely fell in love with research and decided to switch. So I started my transition around 5 years ago and worked with a few nonprofits, but my most career I worked with Bloom, which is a mental health startup. I had the opportunity to be their first user researcher in the team, and also eventually create my own user insights team there, which was amazing. And since about half a year, I'm working as a freelancer with different startups, so helping them understand their users and improve their product. And find a product market fit. So yeah, that's about me.
Brilliant. So we throw this word around, mixed methods research. And I think as a first step, what we should do is ask you, what does it actually mean? What is it?
Yeah, totally. Great question. So, mixed method research, as the name suggests, is combining different methods to answer a research question or a certain business challenge. And we generally look at research from two angles. There's quantitative side, which is more like web app analytics, surveys, cart sorting, and stuff like that. And it helps us analyze data on a large scale and identify patterns and generalize findings about a certain audience. And then there's qualitative side, which is more interviews, diary studies, usability tasks that help us understand more the why behind that data, like deeply understand people's thoughts, motivations, mental models, and stuff like that. So like to bring it to really an easy example, maybe many companies come across is when you analyze your onboarding, you want to understand why people, for example, drop off or aren't starting trials. So you look at where people fall in the funnel, and then with your quantitative data, and then you understand like what are the actual pain points, what are people struggling with the qualitative data. And also, like I just when I was thinking what is mixed method research, I was kind of remembered this tale, of the elephant and like blind man, when people like look at different parts of the elephant, and like one person thinks the trunk is a snake, and then another person thinks that like the body is a wall. So with like mixed method research, we aim to see those different parts of the elephant so that we compare them, and then we kind of get to build a more holistic picture and actually get closer to the truth than we would have if we just applied one side, like qualitative or quantitative or just one method.
Okay, okay. Without going too much in the weeds right now, is there like does it always happen sequentially that you first do, let's say, quantitative and then qualitative, or does it like sometimes happen parallel? How can we imagine that?
Actually, there's ultimately like three ways you can do mixed method research. Is that you start with quantitative and you follow up with qualitative, or you start with qualitative and you follow up with quantitative. You can do
Hmm.
this in parallel. And usually it's also a creative process. So you can start with your data analytics, and you go into your like user interviews, and then you learn something new. So then you like want to dig more into the data. But in terms of the parallel, this is maybe the most rare things to do. But like one example of that would be running, for example, a diary study, and like looking at
Hmm.
this same data, like where people self-report their experience with the product, and you kind of cross-checking that data with your analytics. Like, are they actually doing what they are saying they're doing? And then there could be like discrepancies between those findings. So then you like try to understand why it's happening. So, but yeah, to answer your question, it can be sequential, can be parallel.
Okay, okay, got it. So, tell us a little bit about why it's interesting for you. Like, why did you specialize in this
Yeah.
area?
I really love mixed method research, but also because I do have background in data analytics, and then I switched to user research to focus more on the qualitative part. Like I loved interviews, I loved getting like super nerdy and getting to the deep motivations of people. I'm kind of like mixed methods by nature. But it took me, like as I mentioned, more than 2 years inside the company to even find out there's a user research team, which was both like exciting but also a bit disappointing because like it was just never in my picture. And when I got to know that team, I was like, wow, but we're working on very similar topics. Like, why don't we kind of join our efforts? With what analysts do, marketing analysts do, and what with user researchers do. And it seemed just like such a waste for the company to not be doing that and keep those like teams siloed. So I thought like, okay, if I get to do it one day, I'll do it differently. And that's kind of how the user insights team came about at Bloom, where we didn't really look at a specific function, like, oh, is this a user research question? Is this a quantitative question? Is this a data analytic question? But rather looking just at the question and like applying the methods that work the best to answer that. And there are also other companies that like
Yeah,
inspire to do this. Like Spotify, for example, has a very cool like team structure where they like data scientists and user researchers work together. Yeah.
sweet. I love that. I'm anyhow like a big fan of involving the team as much as possible in research and exposing them to users. But um, let's talk about one aspect of mixed method research, which I caught from what you said. It means it's multiple methods. When we talk about interviews, that's time consuming. If you're doing analytics, you also need to like come up with the questions. You like sometimes need to clean data. Um, so the question for me is, what justifies the time that you have to spend with mixed methods?
Yeah, I'm laughing because like whenever there's a question about research, there's always a question about time. And
Always, always.
Always, yeah. And I love that, like, in this context, we actually talk about not doing research at all, but like doing mixed method research, that, you know, it's kind of like a step up for the whole research practice, that we're not like questioning its existence, but we're thinking like, oh, should we do mixed method or not? But like, that said, like, it's actually very similar to the decision making around doing research or not doing research. And I really love this framework by one of the research leaders in the field, Jeanette Fucella. So she like maps it out on a problem clarity and risk framework. So wherever your risk is higher and your problem clarity is lower, you should be research heavy. Like if you have low risk and your problem clarity is super high, like you can just, you know, continue iterating on the design and kind of measure the outcome. But yeah, the more we move on the risk axis,
Yes.
yeah, the better it is to do research, and the more research you should do. So like do more mixed method research.
Mm.
And like if your decisions involve high cost, then it's better to spend like another week doing interviews or like validating actually your interview data with other methods than than like building your own thing. So that's kind of like very similar to research. But if I'm like to give the reasons why you should do mixed
Yeah.
method research, like first, actually like counterintuitively maybe, but doing mixed method can cut down the time of doing your research. So let's say you want to like understand a big question, like why are people leaving the app, like why aren't they renewing subscription and stuff like that. So if you just jump into like interviews, it will take you a long time to come up to the answer. But if you spend your like due diligence on data analytics and really investigate the problem, it will really narrow down your qualitative questions, so you spend less time and effort doing that. That's one thing. And obviously, like, you do need to go into the reasons behind your quantitative data. So like to see the whole picture, as I mentioned before, like the whole elephant. And as I mentioned, like you can just hypothesize different solutions that would help you improve that data. But if those decisions involve high like development costs, it's just like easier to get to those conclusions with research rather than trial and error. But also the other way around, when you're doing a lot of qualitative research, like mixed method helps us answer a question like, should we actually bother kind of implementing
Yes.
or acting on those insights? So if I hear, like, for example,
Can you give an example? Yes.
Yeah, at Bloom, like we heard from a few people that they wanted like a search. They wanted to look for content because like Bloom was a content first product. But like, should we actually invest in developing a search function? And like, to what percentage of people is this even a problem? Or is it just two users who I heard in the interview? So, for example, as a proxy to understand like how big of a problem is it, we looked into data analytics and the percentage of people who were like browsing the content section of the app, like browsing different categories to see if people are actually like looking for something. You could also do a survey. So it helps you kind of like generalize the insights you get from qualitative research to your app population to make sure that you're going to invest time in something that matters to people. And then lastly, when like say you do a large qualitative study and you get like tens of different gaps and needs and pain points, like which ones do you actually focus on. You can do this based on your own experience, or like based on what you think or what you got from the interviews, but like a better way to do it is do some quantitative part to it. So for example, doing like an opportunity gap survey, or things like
Yes,
that.
and the opportunity gap survey being like measuring to what extent a user is happy with the current solution of a problem and how important that problem is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Excellent. Um, let's navigate to a different topic. There are two topics I'd like to cover with you today. The first one being, let's just assume I've never done mixed methods research. I like what I'm hearing and I want to get started. Um, what's your suggestion? How to go about that?
Yeah. Likewise, it's very similar to how you run any type of research study, but with the exception that at first you already have that like knowledge or understanding or idea that you can do mixed methods. So in general, like as I mentioned, there are three ways to do it, like, or three most common ways to do it. Like you either do first like quant and then qual, so data and then interview or usability, that, or you can follow up with quant again. Or you start with qualitative and then follow up with quant, like interview and then survey or data analytics, or you do it in parallel, like you do a diary study and compare your
Hmm.
findings with data. So once you know that, you already have that, like subconsciously there are things going on in your head that you can create a mixed method research study. And then as you do with just general research, you start with a big goal or question you want to answer. You break it down into smaller questions, and choose the right methods for them. So if you're approaching a big goal like understanding user churn, you break it out, or maybe like evaluating a feature performance and like finding improvements for that feature. Like you want to understand how people are using it, at what point they drop off and why. So these are already, like, as you see, oh, this might involve data analytics and interviews. And then you want to understand, like, so for example, like at Bloom, we wanted to evaluate our programs feature, which is like a mental health targeted content. So we wanted to understand, is it actually helping them? Like maybe they're dropping off because it's just not like relevant. So yeah, so that we did with the survey. So it was like already, like when you want to get that holistic picture of a certain feature, like you just combine different methods, and then
Can,
you create your
mhm.
research plan. So
can,
yes.
can you give it like an example of what is a typical example of starting, let's say, with interviews and following up with a survey, just to have like something tangible in mind that we can remember after the webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at that like example of evaluating a feature performance. So let's say we launched like a feature on our app at Bloom, and then I usually start, like I always actually start doing research with data analytics. So to kind of get the most out of the data before I actually go and talk to people. Um, so, and we had, like at that point, we already had a data analyst in the team. So he started like really looking at the different factors that were driving program completion. Like, was it the length of the program? Was it the amount of exercises? Um, like how people were using the feature, how long it took them to complete the program. And after that, and on my side was doing more user research. So
Hmm.
it was understanding, okay, if they were completing the program over a longer period of time, like why was it actually happening? Like what was their like experience with the program? How did they report um, did it help them, and did they see the improvement? Were they able to apply the exercises that we provided in the program? So that all came out in a survey. And what I always also do when I launch a survey, I add a question like, would you be open to chatting with us, like about your experience? So this already kind of, my survey is also my recruitment for interviews. So then it's an easy way for me to follow up with people about their actual experience. The important thing when you're like doing this mixed method research is having some sort of connection between all these points. So, for example, we found that like there was completely different experience for people with different levels of knowledge on the topic. So I needed to have this parameter in the survey. I needed to ask people, okay, what's your experience with it? And then I also had this parameter in my data, and then I could also like draw conclusions in
You
the
could
interview.
match the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. What I wanted to get a feeling of is like you have to navigate through multiple types of methods. You do all the matching. What are some of the pitfalls that you've come across and like you suffered and learned from as you became a mixed methods expert?
Yeah, so I think like all of my experience comes from my mistakes. Like one of, for example, like in the beginning, I so as I mentioned, like I come from data analytics background, so it's like it's easy for me to just jump into data analytics. And then I was really interested in interviews, but what I didn't do in the beginning is quantify the data I got from the interviews and like prioritize that data. So we did do like a large user turn study, and I found like so many opportunities for improvement in the app. But yeah, at that time, I didn't really do do the like prioritization part with more quantitative data, which yeah, I hope. So you live, you learn, right?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things is like you follow, you think that you know, and then you follow your gut feeling, and then but it's like if it's a big decision, as I mentioned, it's always better to cross validate it with a different method. um yeah Let me think. But yeah, of course, it takes like a little bit longer. So but as long as you um like as long as you use the methods effectively, and as I mentioned, like use tricks, like already set the foundation for doing um, like qualitative when you're doing quantitative, like asking people if they would be happy to participate in interviews, that cuts time. um, yeah.
Cool. Cool. You already like mentioned a number of research projects, like be it investigating churn or investigating the use of a new feature. Could you guide us through like your, let's say, your favorite mixed methods research project? Of what was it about? Why did you like it? What was the outcome?
Yeah, sure. So one of my favorite ones is a study I've done recently with a startup who's producing like digital avatars. So you can like upload yourself on the web, and then you have a digital avatar like speaking for you at events like that. Webinars. And we did like part of the study was doing segmentation of their users and creating user personas. And I like that's, I think, where mixed method shines the most is with this kind of goal, because like you can start with data and really like identifying different user groups based on their behavior, and in like during data we actually found that it was very dependent on the, like it was a B2B company, so it was dependent on the role that those people had in the company. And then we sent out a survey to all of those different user groups, also asking them what their role they had. I remember like connecting the
Mm-hmm.
different data points. So like understanding their high level pain points with the product, like why like to different people who bought the product to people who dropped off, like understanding what were the reasons behind it, what were they trying to achieve in the first place. And then like with interviews, dig deeper into understanding their more like motivations and their deeper needs with the product. And the cool thing about it was that if we just started sending out survey to people, or if we just started with interviews, we actually had a very low response rate. Like it wasn't response rate from a certain group. It just wasn't representative of who the customers actually were, that we learned based on data. So for example, we learned like if we just sent the survey, we didn't almost get any like marketing digital marketing managers, but in the data we knew that this is a large user base. So like we had to like put more effort into actually getting them to like interviews. But if we hadn't investigated this with the data, we wouldn't have known that this market even exists. So which actually was really matching very well with the company goals.
This is super interesting. What I'm interested also about is so in this particular project, you started with data, then you ran surveys, and then you did interviews. Now, my question is, when you came to the step with the interviews, you had to come up with your discussion guide. Um, how relevant do you think was your knowledge from the survey and from data analytics to ask appropriate questions? And to what extent did these two prior studies influence what you asked in the interviews?
Yeah, it always does. And this is not the first time I'm kind of interviewing people with whom I run a survey. So like a really cool thing, you can look back at their answers and kind of already ask more targeted question, like why did you actually put that answer? And you already go into the interview knowing what you want to learn about that specific person. So let's say I'm doing like a survey, and then like some of it makes sense, but with some of it, like people just give vague answers, or there's something else I want to learn. So then I like in the interviews, I'm like, it just makes it much easier to run interviews because they're more specific. Does this answer your question, or?
Absolutely, yes. This is what I was because I like intuitively assumed that if you have some data points, you can ask. Like you have the survey answers, you can dig into those answers. You can take it. You're not starting from like zero in the
Yeah,
100 meter
yeah,
sprint, but you're starting from 20, and then you can use that prior knowledge.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, okay, excellent. Um, we're at the end of the section of our discussion. I have a question I'd like to ask as a last one. If we are to remember three important points or three
Mm.
things from today, from all of the stuff that you shared with us, what should they be?
Yeah. So I'm a visual person, so like remember the elephant. Like if you're looking at something that you think is a snake, like and and like just think what cost would it be for your startup if you go ahead with this assumption. Or if it's not a big cost, like you may move forward, but if it is, like what other things can you do to make sure that your perspective is right, or like to move closer to the right perspective. Like maybe you do like, yeah, a different research method to look at a different part of the elephant, or maybe you actually invite like a different researcher to look with together with you and validate, like, do you think I'm right? So yeah. And then actually, yes, something that I haven't mentioned, but doing research with your team, like having other team participate in your sessions is another way of doing like mixed method research in terms of validating your data. So
Excellent, and that's a very nice final word. Involve the team. I think that's going to be the
yeah.
hashtag when I publish the recording. And thanks a lot, Maria, for all the wisdom that you shared and the stories. It's super insightful, and I already see a number of questions coming in, so I'm just going to go chronologically. And the first one came from Vinny when in the beginning of the session. And the question is, when you're building from 0 to 1 the product, there's not much quantitative data available yet. What are the chief resources that you use for your research from your sales team, marketing team, customer success, and so on?
Actually, yeah, it's funny I didn't mention that. Absolutely use all data available for your product, and if you don't even have time, for example, to run like any cross method research, like do utilize customer support tickets, like reviews for your app that can give that like more insight into the problem. If there's no much data available, then yeah, you need to skip the data analytics part and start, let's say, with a survey or with interviews. So I mean, yeah, but to also like answer the question, do use all data available, like support requests and reviews and.
Okay, cool. Thanks. The second part of the question is, how do you approach potential users and conduct user interviews to validate your hypothesis before building the MVP of your product? So I interpret the question here, and I hope I do it properly. There's no product yet that you can put in front of the users.
So you need to start with some hypothesis around who your users are, and I think it was a example in the mom test. It's like you need to like your hypothesis around your target users need to be specific enough so you know where to find them. And when you start building, like you either like, oh, this is my user, or you might be like, no, that this person doesn't seem to have a need in my product. Do I need to change the product? Like, am I interested, or do I have the capacity to change my product to meet their needs, or is there maybe a different user base that I need to target for that? And then you start hypothesizing of other user segments. So, but how you find them, again, like where those users are, like first foremost, use your social connections. So I always start there if I'm recruiting people for my own research, the research of my clients. So like, are those people on social media like LinkedIn or Instagram and stuff like that? There are other tools that you can use to recruit people specifically for research, but they're usually quite costly, and startups usually don't want to do that. But there is like user testing. There's also like what is it called, like through Amazon, you can do this survey. Um, yeah, and but also there are some creative ways that you can find users for your study by creating the opportunities to meet them. So, for example, if Akash wanted to research their product, he might start like doing webinars and then inviting people, like inviting participants to participate in research. Like one of my clients was actually developing a solution for data analysts. So she joined like people transitioning in the data analytics field. She joined like different webinars for data analysts to kind of get connected with participants there.
Yeah. Which reminded me, like some webinars have this like specific tab where you can throw in your LinkedIn account. I never knew why they did that, but now the light bulb is up
Yeah. So
for
like
this
find why
one.
they are kind of. Yeah.
Yes, good. I have a question related to recruitment, and this is about hard to reach specialized users when you have a tight research budget. And the example Laurent brings is a SaaS startup targeting director level users in a niche industry. How do you try to find these hard to recruit people?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like personally, I have not worked for a company like that. Like it was very easy to get users for Bloom because everyone, like it was a mental health app, so like a large population has to some extent affiliation with this topic. But if I were to start a project right now, like I would use personal connections, and I would ask people to get me connected to those people, so build like personal relationships.
Mhm.
Probably you don't need to have like, I don't know, tens of people like that. So but you can get to like 3, 5, 8 people to talk to. And I think the most effective way would be by, yeah, reaching out personally. um, yeah.
Okay, while the question was directed at you, I can second what you said. I had a guest in my podcast the other month, and his startup is working for solar panel developers, and I asked him the question how he finds it's a fairly niche market, right? There are these solar panel developers, and he was looking for a specific position. So what he did was exactly what you said. He reached out to 10, and he has those people to please introduce him to other ones as well. And I heard it once labeled as a snowball when you ask a snowball recruitment method where you ask for recommendations. But in niche industries, when there's like no direct competition and conflict of interest, uh, don't be ashamed and feel free to ask the person you're talking to for to introduce you to others.
Yeah, referrals, great.
Referrals, yes. Okay, I have a question from Adam. Hey Maria, I just realized that getting useful outcomes from user interview sessions is time consuming. Do you have any method for making this process faster?
So I have a question. What exactly is like what part of the process do you consider most time consuming? Um, so to me, like maybe the Adam could answer in comments, so I could target this directly. But from my experience, the most time consuming was actually analyzing the data, and the most like the process that I needed most patience for. So, but now actually I'm testing different also like AI tools to do that, and even with like so for example, I'm using like Fathom. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Fathom AI to
Fathom.
record Fathom, yeah, AI to record interviews and do the transcript, and they also provide like the summary of the interview, which is probably gets like 60 to 80%, and then you get like more detailed with your own impressions, so that cuts down the time. But yeah, let me know kind of like what part of the process
Okay.
you're
We'll wait for. I hope Adam is still around. If you're here, please post it in the chat. Yes, he meant data analyzing. He just
okay.
confirmed.
um Yeah, well, so the actually what cuts down your time for analysis, and what I personally don't love doing, but I just force myself to do it, is writing summary right after the interview when you still have fresh memory. So you spend like 15 minutes doing that instead of a whole hour doing that, like when you already forget what the person talked about. So yeah.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I have two more questions. If anyone else wants to ask, this is the time. Let me jump to the next one. So the question goes, sometimes research can be overwhelming. The data that you get from your own research, your sales and marketing team, customer success teams, etc., can be too much to drive proper insights, right? You're swamped with actually too much data. How do you navigate such a scenario so that you form the right hypothesis to build the right feature for your users?
Right. So, uh, is the question how to form the right hypothesis, or once you form the hypothesis, how you put together all the data?
My interpretation of the question is that if there's abundance of data, there's just
Yeah.
so much feedback that you get from social media, from
Yeah.
everywhere. How do you
Hmm.
how do you pick what you focus on and what you work with?
Yeah. So in my experience, like, so first, like, start with a question, and not like, oh, I have this ocean of data. How do I make sense of it? Like, don't just go looking at data without
Mhm.
having a question, because otherwise it will be overwhelming. But once you have a specific question, like in my experience, I rarely, maybe it was a fault, but I rarely looked at like social media data, just because there's so, like, it poses more questions usually than gives answers. So I either look through previous research that would help me answer the question, or I do like targeted research to answer a specific data point. So I never start with just like looking at all the data available, but rather start with a question or a hypothesis, and then it's much easier to navigate that. Yeah, I hope this answers the question, but if not, yeah.
Yes, thank you, thank you. There's actually one more question. So we have two more questions now. The first of which is you mentioned using qual methods for prioritization. Could you give an example of how you prioritized improvement opportunities identified in interviews using a qual approach?
Yeah. So for example, like we did that big study on like why people stopped engaging with the app, and I found like so many unmet needs that people express that could potentially lead to more user engagement, but we didn't know which one was more important. So with with quantifying that, you can do it as simply as like there's prioritize the like the needs that you have. So for example, we had like, I want to one of the issues that we identified was around analyzing the data, the mental health data on the app. So it was like, I want to be able to analyze my data for a longer period of time, or I want to understand the patterns between my triggers and emotions. Another like big pain point was that the sessions are too long. It's like, also I want to um, I want to be able to have shorter sessions. And
Mm-hmm.
so I actually used a tool which is called Opinion X, which is a very easy way to, like, people just need to kind of say, is this a problem to them? And then it prioritizes those needs. So that's how I used it to give understanding, like
Okay.
what is most important to people.
Does it? Okay. Okay. Um, cool. We have a
So
last question.
it asks
Yes.
like, is this I don't remember exactly, but like it asks like, is this a problem to you? And then it asks the people to prioritize, is this more important, or is this more important, is this more, like, it kind of gives people two
Okay. Is
options.
it
uh,
is it like a little bit like a buy a feature where you give like 30 credits to your user and you give them five features that they can pick from and they can like allocate the credits based on the relevance for them?
yeah, actually, yeah, that's very similar. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool to have a tool for that, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, like when I used it, it was free, like, so you can also check it out if they haven't. Like, it's called Opinion X, which is super useful for this kind of.
Sweet. Last one because we're already like 1 minute beyond. When you prepare a report from the research, how many
Mm.
conclusions do you put out there?
Yeah, so maybe I'm not the first person to ask. I usually I just love like all the insights that I get from research that it's very hard for me to choose. But I would say like 3 to 5 conclusions that support the biggest, like the goal. Like put as many um as like to answer the research question. But like too many is also too much. So I would say like 3 to 5 is something that worked for me the best. Yeah,
Excellent.
like big insights,
Maria,
and then yeah.
I think we could stay and listen to you and pick your mind until eternity. Right now, we're at the end of our session. I'm really grateful that you could carve out time from your day and be with us, share your experience with us, and I hope to have you around in the future and tell us new projects that you worked on.
Yeah, totally. Akash, thank you so much for having me again, and everyone for your great questions and for sticking around. And I don't know if you're actually going to share my LinkedIn, but if you have any questions, I'm like happy to answer them also offline.
Yes, thanks for everyone for being here. Thanks for the awesome questions. I recorded the session today, which I will upload on YouTube in the next few days. And all of you who were here, you will get an email from me with the recording link, with the links of the tools that Maria mentioned, as well as her LinkedIn. So we have everything neatly in a single place.
Awesome. Okay, everyone, have a
Awesome.
great
Thanks a lot.
evening.
Wish you a nice
Great.
day, everyone. Take care.
Bye.